Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Whisky Geek. Just filming a real impromptu episode because I caught wind of an offer on some whiskey at Aldi, and for those who've never tried, Aldi do some pretty decent whiskies for their price point. What caught my eye about this deal was it's a whiskey that's actually older than me, and it's coming down to 40 quid for the weekend. So me and Joe quickly popped into Aldi to take a look, and sure enough, there it was. There are a couple of things that made me think that this would be worth giving a try. Obviously there's the age statement and the price. It's a single malt and it's a Speyside. A well-aged Speyside rarely goes that far wrong, but then it's only bottled at 40% and the tasting notes are fairly generic for a Speyside. Rich and fruity, ripe red apples. I've just noticed that, I don't know whether that'll come out, but they've not paid all that much attention to the packaging because they've got aroma notes and more aroma notes. I'm assuming these ones should be for the palate. Rich and complex flavours with layers of fresh fruits, vanilla spice and mellow oak, and then the finish is long-lasting oak. So I wanted to have a quick taste, see how good or bad it is, and see if it's worth stockpiling a couple of bottles while it's on offer. The packaging isn't the best quality, but for 40 quid you'd be hard pressed to find another bottle that comes in its own little wooden box. So here it is, the Glen Marnoch Distillers Reserve 1988 Speyside single malt. I kind of like that they've stated it's a 1988 bottled in 2018 rather than just shouting around that it's 30 years old. I can't see any mention anywhere of chill filtration or colouring. Now that isn't a ridiculous colour for a 30-year-old, it's not far off what I'd expect. It's got a nice crisp gold colour in the glass. The legs aren't crazy thick, but they are quite slow running and well defined. Initially off the nose, I kind of get the impression that the low ABV is not really doing justice to the age. The oak influence is very present, it's got a nice spiced kind of tone to it, and that fairly generic Christmas cake type of fruitiness. Sultanas, currants, brown sugar. The deep oak does keep pulling me in though. It has got that quality, although it's subtle, although it's quite toned down, it has got that woody quality that really draws me into older whiskey. Where the oaky tannins have turned from bitter to smooth and refined. It's very nicely rounded, and the longer it's sitting in the glass, the more complex it's becoming. It's too soft. It's a shame that they didn't bottle it at 46%. They've really hurt it by watering it down so much. It's definitely the character of the wood that's taken centre stage, but there's a lot of vanilla, some ginger. After having sipped it and going back to the nose, it's taken me straight back to RM class in high school where we were putting together this crappy little set of shelves. But it's sawdust and wood glue. There's still caramel and fruity notes, but it's kind of take a solventy turn. I like it. It's a good authentic Speyside. The woody character really works for it. I just wish, beyond all else, that they had the guts to do it at 46%. I do think it's worth me trying to find another couple of bottles, keep them stashed away, but I'm not going to clear the shelves. Well, there you have it. 80 quid and 10 minutes later, and I've got myself 3 bottles. So obviously the first impressions were good enough that I wanted to go and buy more, but I want to spend a little bit more time with it, let it breathe properly and do a proper review so that I can help you decide whether you want to pick up a bottle. So this is really going to be my first proper whiskey review, a bit of a departure from the advent calendar series I've been doing, and rather than keeping them little snippets, I want to go into a little bit more detail and geek out. If you've seen my advent calendar series, you'll probably have seen some of these around. This is how I take my notes, and it's based primarily on work of Charles McLean that he's presented in a couple of books. Now in these books he talks through full sensory evaluation of the whiskey, not just the nose and the taste, but the appearance, colour, the mouthfeel, the texture and the legs, how thick, how high alcohol content is it, everything that you can get out of a whiskey. And this is kind of what I've tried to capture in my little tasting cheat sheets. Now obviously I've got a little colour chart here, but at the core of it is this flavour wheel. Now what I tend to do is use this space down here to annotate all of the flavours and the aromas that I'm pulling out, but then use this to allocate them to their kind of core profile and give them an indication of strength along the leg. Now this gives you a little bit better indicator of how the whiskey presents, where the character is strong or weak and where flavours are subtle and hiding in the background. And then of course down the bottom I have a little indicator of what I rate it out of 100. Now I was having a little conversation with Whisky Jason on YouTube, who has a great channel that you should check out with a pile of different industry interviews as well as lesser known whiskies. So definitely give him a look. And he raised the point that a lot of whiskey reviewers don't actually use an absolute scale. They don't start from 0 and go up to 100. They kind of start from 70 to go up to 100. And I find that a little confusing, to be honest. You know, it's presumptuous that they're going to come across whiskies which are at least a 70 and never anything below. But why start your scale at 70? You know, it's just kind of condensing the scale down and giving you less differentiation of where a whiskey belongs in comparison to each other. So I tend to use an absolute scale going from 0 to 100, with, you know, the top 90th percentile being incredible whiskies, 80th percentile being very good whiskies, 70th being worth having, worth trying, worth spending money on, 60th being a little bit of a letdown, maybe a little bit absent in areas, maybe a few funky tones, and it incrementally gets worse. I would say anything below a 30 is something I'll actively avoid drinking, and anything below 50 I probably wouldn't want to spend money on. But to be fair, the lower end of the scale tends to be for those kind of whiskies that are aimed at consumers and not enthusiasts. People who just want to dump it in some Coke, neck it and get drunk. It's certainly not why I drink whiskey, and I imagine it's not why most of you drink whiskey either. So because of that, my scoring system may seem a little bit less condensed than other people, and I'll be giving 70s to things which other people are giving 80s. Within the context of a 50 being an average score, a 70 is by no means a bad score. So now that I've waffled on for far too long, let's go in and try the whiskey. Now to recap, this is a Glen Marnoch small batch Distillers Reserve 1988 Speyside single malt. So distilled 1988, bottled in 2018. It's at least 29 years old, probably 30 years old. So it's got a developing nose. It's very sweet, it's very caramelly, bourbon influence. It's got a lot of fruity brown sugar tones. It's Christmassy. You know, it's like a Christmas pudding just after the flame's been blown out. But as it airs and as it develops and breathes, the woody character really comes to play. It's by no means pungent, you know, it's not that rich because it's 40%. It's all in the subtleties, but it becomes a very mature, kind of dusty vanilla oak with some ginger in there, wood shavings and red apples. One thing that always draws me into a well-aged whiskey is the development of flavours, the fact that you can sit with it and each sip, each sniff will be a slightly different iteration, it will be a slightly different evolution of the same profile, and it hasn't lost it in this. Those orchard fruits are really coming through now. At first it's like toffee apples and then a bit of ginger, kind of fresh ginger, you know, a bit crisp. And then the wood again comes through and it's like a peppery wood. It's not bitter, it's smooth and it's rounded, you know, it's well-aged wood. And then going back to the nose, it's like old wood furniture, a little bit of leather. It's definitely got quite a bit of bourbon influence in it. It's still got those kind of smooth, sweet caramel and toffee. But what I'm really appreciating in this is the oaky character. You know, it's got a well-defined but smooth and complex oak character. And the tannins are there, but they're not bitter, they're not sharp, they're full-bodied, and it's like sawdust and furniture. It takes me back to woodworking in school. Now there's cloves and a little bit more floral and herbal notes, playing off of the apple. And there's those kind of solventy, wood polish, dusty notes. And cinnamon. I love it. I love the flavour profile, I love the evolution, I love how much it's evolving and how much there is to play with and explore. Now we've got to talk about the finish. And I feel like this is where the whiskey's Achilles heel is. If they'd have bottled it at 46%, it would have had more punch, it would have had more to speak about. But as it is, sat at 40%, it just kind of peters out. It's just a little absent. It's like the woody character follows through, there's pepper, there's ginger, and it gradually subsides, leaving just a little bit of woodiness. It's medium short at best. I'd be inclined to call it short, which for a 30-year-old is disappointing. But for 40 quid, and to be the weak point of an otherwise fantastic whiskey, you can't really fault it that much. I've given this whiskey a well-deserved 86 out of 100, which for £40 is a great score. Now I think it normally retails for 50 quid, which is still a good price, but I'm a sucker for an offer. So if it had been 50, I probably wouldn't have jumped back there and bought another 2 bottles, but at 40 quid, it's something that I want to have spares laying around. I want to feel like it's easily accessible. I want to feel like I can share it freely. It carves a little bit of a niche in my collection where I can use it to highlight how the oak matures and how the cask develops a whiskey over time. So it'll fit quite nicely into some of my tastings, into some of my flights, and it'll be a good one to talk people through. I wish they had had the balls to have bottled it at 46%. At 40, it's solid, but it's just lacking that punch, it's lacking the girth to really do it justice. I'm sure that if they'd taken it up to 46%, they would have had to charge more, but it would have been worth more, and the finish would have left you feeling a little bit more fulfilled. It also tastes like it's been chill filtered, which is disappointing because you can feel it's taken some of the oils and the fats out of the whiskey, and it's lost that texture and lost a little bit of depth. One last thing to mention is the packaging. Now at 40 quid you can't be too critical, but I feel like what they've done is try to do premium packaging, but they've done it cheaply. It hasn't quite worked. There's typos on the box and the quality of materials is a little bit poor. For what it is, I feel like they could have done a solid card box and ignored the wood, and it would have come out slightly cheaper, but it would have ultimately felt better. But all in all, this is a whiskey that Aldi really deserve a pat on the back for. To have brought a 29 to 30 year old whiskey to market at about 40 quid is really, really good going, and I feel like anyone who picks this up should be really happy with it. Cheers for watching, guys, and geeking out with me a little bit. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please drop us a thumbs up and a comment. Let me know if you managed to pick up a bottle and what you think of it. Until next time.